Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Garcia, and today I want to talk to you about why you should care about insulin. Okay, we've been talking about insulin in the past few videos, so if you haven't watched those, go back and watch them. Okay, really good information, really important. But again, getting back to why you should care about insulin, right? Maybe when you hear the word insulin, maybe you've heard about it, maybe you associate it with diabetes. That's typically what happens, right? I start talking to people about insulin and they're like, oh yeah, maybe my dad or my grandpa had diabetes, but I don't have diabetes, so I don't really need to understand insulin. But what I wanted to teach you guys today is it's actually critical. It's really, really important to understand insulin for everybody, not just diabetics, but literally for every man, woman, and child. We really want to understand the effect that insulin has on our health. Okay, so again, when we look at insulin, we look at the pancreas. The pancreas is our organ that makes insulin, right? So it kind of works like this: when you eat food, you get a natural increase in blood sugar. So your blood sugar goes up when you eat, and that's healthy and that's normal. In response to that elevated blood sugar, your pancreas makes a hormone called insulin. Okay, and what insulin does, insulin takes that blood sugar that now is increased because you just ate, and it helps that sugar get into our cells where our cells can use it for energy. Okay, one of the other facts that insulin does, one of the other effects, is it converts our body, our extra energy, the stored energy that we're not using. Okay, if we're not burning energy right now, if we have an excess, insulin instructs our body to store that as body fat. Okay, and we talked a little bit about that again in the last video. But getting back to insulin, so insulin literally allows our sugar to go from the blood into our cells, where our cells can use that sugar for energy. Okay, so when you think about type 1 diabetes, which is childhood onset diabetes, there's a major problem with the pancreas, where the pancreas can no longer produce insulin. Okay, and in those patients, what happens is that when they eat, their blood sugar goes up, but that sugar cannot physically get into the cells, so those cells starve, and patients literally starve to death and they die unless they get insulin. So insulin, it's critical. It's a very, very important hormone for everybody, but just like anything else, we always talk about the Goldilocks rule. Okay, Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, not too high, not too low, but just right. So insulin, we don't want it too low, obviously that's diabetes, and we don't want it too high. And today that's what we're really gonna talk about, is we're gonna talk about what happens when insulin becomes too high, because literally it's an epidemic that we're facing right now. Okay, so high insulin, right? Over time, we'll talk about why it gets high in a minute, but right now, when insulin is elevated, that is known to lead to high cholesterol and high triglycerides. How many people today are struggling with cholesterol levels and triglyceride levels? Increased cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and strokes are associated with high insulin. Okay, elevated blood pressure. Okay, that again is associated with high insulin. Cancer, we know, is associated with high insulin. Okay, weight loss resistance. Weight loss resistance is a big topic that we're talking a lot about lately. We've seen a lot of people that they're doing all the right things, right? They're watching their diet, they're eating right, they're exercising, they're doing all the things that they think that's right for them to do in order to lose weight, but they get on the scale and the scale just isn't moving at all. Their body is resistant to losing that weight. Okay, one of the reasons why is because insulin levels are too high, telling your body to store fat, to continue to store fat and store fat, kind of like pre-hibernation. A lot of times they'll call insulin the hibernation hormone. So when we're getting ready for the long winter, we want to fatten up, okay, because there's not going to be food. Food's not going to be as available during certain seasons, during the long migration, or during the drought, or you can kind of pick your own what if. But nowadays there's no drought, there's no famine. There's literally food on every corner. Okay, so we don't have this need to store excess calories. Okay, so weight loss resistance is really important. Increased waist to hip ratio is associated with high insulin. And then, one of my pet peeves is what's called pre-diabetes. Okay, maybe you've heard of pre-diabetes. Maybe your doctor said, oh, your blood sugars are starting to creep up a little bit, but it's not, you're not diabetic at this point, so maybe we'll just watch it, but right now you're doing okay because you're not diabetic. You're just maybe borderline or maybe pre-diabetic. That gets me so upset when patients come in. They show me their blood work. Their blood sugar is clearly elevated outside of a good, healthy, functional range. Okay, but their doctors are not concerned. They're not alarming. They're not striking a chord with that patient that, wow, something's kind of going awry. We might want to do something about this. Okay, so the thing with blood sugar, okay, we have to understand our body is designed to keep blood sugar in a normal range. Okay, when blood sugar gets too low, okay, that's called hypoglycemia. We don't feel good. We're faint. We're anxious. We're dizzy. We're lightheaded. Our heart's racing. It's not a good way to live. Okay, if our blood sugar is too high, that's called diabetes. Okay, we can get a diabetic coma and we can die, right? So, blood sugar, we don't want it too high, we don't want it too low. Our body is beautifully designed. Our body keeps it within a normal range, okay? And when that sugar handling mechanism starts to break down and you start getting when you start getting blood sugar levels elevating, okay, you don't want to wait until it gets to that certain point where now you say you're diabetic, okay, because that's the end stage. There's a lot of things that break down prior to that blood sugar elevating outside that normal range. Okay, so literally, if you're waiting for your blood sugar to be in a diabetic range before you do anything about it, way too long. Okay, again, that's late stage. You want to start early. You want to get it as soon as you start seeing any of these symptoms here. These are our early warning signs. Okay, so obviously you want to look at your blood sugar, but don't let that be what makes you take action. Okay, look at these factors. Okay, so why is insulin high? Okay, why are so many people nowadays walking around with high insulin? How do you even know if you have high insulin? Another kind of pet peeve of mine is that all blood tests pretty much will look for cholesterol, they'll look for triglycerides, they'll look for blood sugar, but how many people on a normal blood test do they measure fasting insulin? I can tell you it's very, very, very rare. Okay, but it's an important test. It's something that you want to ask for, especially if you have any of these concerns. Okay, so why does insulin get elevated? There's two main reasons. Okay, there's bad foods and there's bad timing. Okay, and both of them are important. I think if you look at Batman and Robin, obviously Batman's maybe a little bit more important than Robin. Bad timing is Batman and bad foods are Robin. And most people spend most of their time looking at carbohydrates, fats, proteins, looking at the types of foods that they're eating versus the timing that they're eating their foods. Okay, so specifically with bad foods, the foods that we're talking about are foods that spike insulin. And what spikes insulin is refined processed carbohydrates. These are the carbs. So flour-based products, cereals and breads and pastas and cookies and pastries and bagels and all those chips type foods. So refined processed carbohydrates, definitely we want to limit the consumption of those. I understand that most people have heard that and understood that, but the reason why is because literally it's having an effect on your hormones. Okay, specifically on the fat hormone called insulin. Okay, also snack foods, right? This is there's this whole new group of foods that are called snack foods. Okay, 30 years ago, when there was really no obesity, there was, diabetes and obesity were not the epidemic that they are today, snack foods didn't exist. There was just food. Okay, we ate food. We didn't have, these bagged, boxed, processed, prepared foods now that are snack foods that, now we're just grabbing all the time. We're putting them in our kids' lunches. We're grabbing them, on the go out of vending machines, or, when we fuel up our car, we fuel up ourselves as well. And, so we really want to avoid what are called snack foods, and we just want to eat food. We just want to eat real food, okay? Another big one that we see are the artificial sweeteners, right? The non-caloric sweeteners, like Sweet and Low, and like Splenda, and like NutraSweet, and you guys know the ones that I'm talking about. Okay, they were very, very popular there for a while because they're low calorie or they're no calorie, right? They don't provide any calories. And in 2 videos ago we talked about why having a low calorie diet is really the worst thing that you can do if you're trying to get healthy, if you're trying to lose weight. Okay, calorie restriction does not work. And the problem with artificial sweeteners, they are no calories, but they do create an insulin response. Okay, so when you have your Diet Coke, or when you have your whatever it is sweetened with Sweet and Low, you're still getting an insulin spike. So over time, that's causing high insulin, which can lead to all these different factors. Okay, so a couple of tips on bad foods. We want to make better food choices. Okay, and then let's get to Batman. Bad timing. Okay, timing matters, right? So when we eat, you want to think of it kind of like a wave chart. Okay, so you eat, your insulin goes up in response to blood sugar, and then over time your insulin comes back down. Okay, and then maybe you have lunch and your blood sugar goes up, and then your blood sugar comes back down. And then you have dinner, your insulin goes up and your insulin comes down. So during the day, you're getting an increase and then a decrease in insulin. Okay, and that's a normal pattern, obviously. But we've been told we have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Okay, especially if you want to lose weight, if you want to keep your metabolism high, you got to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Okay, it's bad information. And I have to admit, I used to tell people this. Like, it was so ingrained in our culture, so ingrained in gyms and in health. That's what you heard, is you got to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And I have to admit that I fell into that belief system too. But we know now that that's a recipe for high insulin, and we know high insulin is associated with all these different factors. Okay, so eating every 2 to 3 hours is a bad idea. Okay, same thing, 4 to 5 small meals a day. Okay, this is good for our digestion. It's good for our metabolism. It helps to not have blood sugar drop. It's good for our energy. And again, it's a disaster for insulin. It's spiking insulin, and then before insulin has a chance to get back down, it's right back up. And then it's starting to come down, but then it goes right back up. So over time, fasting insulin, instead of being here, fasting insulin is now here. Okay, and the other one is breakfast. Okay, breakfast, we've been told, it's the most important meal of the day. Got to start your day with a good, healthy breakfast to jumpstart your metabolism, and you know the story. I'm sure you've heard it. But and then think about the foods with breakfast too, right? We have cereal, which is a refined processed carbohydrate that spikes insulin. We have toast and bagels. Again, they're refined flour products that spike insulin. The pancakes and the waffles and all these quote unquote breakfast foods. So when we're looking at how to lower insulin, there's 2 main solutions. There's 2 ways that we know that have been proven to lower insulin. Okay, the first one is lowering your refined processed carbohydrates, having a lower carbohydrate diet in general. So you want to focus more on good fats, high quality, healthy fats, good quality proteins, and healthy carbohydrates that are not refined, not processed. Okay. So some examples of healthy carbohydrates might be like a sweet potato, or like a yam, or fruit, or some starchy vegetables. Those are healthy carbs. They will cause a little bit of an insulin spike, but not like the refined processed carbohydrates do. Okay. So again, we want to lower our total carbohydrate load, and then we want to have a little bit more space between our meals. And we've been talking a little bit more about what's called intermittent fasting, or there's different fasting protocols. And one that we tend to promote, we tell our patients about, is what's called intermittent fasting. Okay, and what that is it's eating your meals in an 8-hour window during the day. Okay, a lot of times what works good for a lot of people is maybe you have your first meal at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then you have your last meal at 7 p.m. at night. So during 8 hours, you have healthy meals in between there, not counting calories, not looking at the total caloric intake, but just keeping your food consumption between those 2 hours, between those 8 hours, and then from 7 at night until 11 in the morning, your body's in a fasting state, and that helps insulin levels to get back down to a healthy level. Okay, and if you do this, consistently, that is really, really important. It's actually more important than food choices for bringing insulin levels down. Okay, so there's a lot of information, but again, it's really important because there's an epidemic of high insulin. You can do something about it for sure. Okay, but you have to take action. You have to be one of those people that say, okay, that's good information, but now I want to do something about it. And so, start with lowering those carbs, and then, try intermittent fasting. There's a lot of information that you can read on the internet. There's a lot of good sites, a lot of good information that will talk more about that, and we'll be doing more videos about that as well. Okay, we'll see you guys in the next video.